Hi there, and welcome to Semmelweis STEMtalk. Today, we're happy to be joined by Eszter Anna Varga, a real-life rocket scientist. Eszter is currently an Aerospace System Safety Engineer at Honeywell Aerospace Technologies based in the Czech Republic, where she helps make sure complex aerospace systems stay safe and reliable when it matters most. Her journey took her all the way from Hungary to Virginia Tech in the United States, where she completed both her bachelor's and master's degrees in aerospace engineering. Along the way, she's earned competitive scholarships, major industry recognitions, and a Level 2 high-power rocketry certification. And what makes Eszter's story especially powerful is that she doesn't just build, she brings people with her. She's a passionate mentor and community builder, supporting women and gender minorities in STEM. She's also a science communicator who shares the real behind the scenes of engineering. And she's a 2-time TEDx speaker who uses her voice to make big ideas feel personal and actionable. Today, we're talking rockets, mentorship, and leadership, and what it really takes to carve your own path in aerospace while opening that path for others. Eszter, hi, thank you very much for being here today. It's so lovely to see you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story that led you into engineering and a little bit about your current field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's lovely to be here. I was very excited, as I told you a couple of times. Also, I guess, disclaimer, I do have a mild cold, so there will be some sniffling and all that, but we'll get through it. The story, well, there's ways to get it started. The long story, kind of shorter, is that I did not like science. I know, not a popular opinion to say nowadays. Also, people don't always believe me, I guess, so I try and bring examples most of the time. I had the worst anxiety when it came to chemistry and physics classes. I was the person that was like, oh no, that's what's coming up on the timetable, and oh, I can't wait to be done with it all, and it's so pointless, and I don't get it, and it's so confusing. And I love the art. I mean, for me, literature and writing and all that was all I really cared about. I started reading all the classics at 11 or something. I was a weird kid. Not much has changed, but it definitely started out as, well, she's reading some of those books. I wasn't reading those classic teen books. Although I guess I did read some of them, but I wasn't, reading Twilight or I guess whatever was popular at the time. Not that there's anything wrong with Twilight, it's just I liked, Pride and Prejudice and all those things. So still a little bit of romance, I guess, in there, but I wanted to write. I obviously, as most young teenagers do, I felt very misunderstood in the world and very out of place. And I guess literature was a great escape for me in that. I felt that I can come up with characters and stories that was very into fiction, beautiful ways of saying things. And I loved confusing people with those beautiful ways of saying things and metaphors and all that. And so I think what's left of that nowadays is that, as you can tell, I tend to talk in very lengthy paragraphs, and I'm horrible at giving short answers. That's why I'm bad at short interviews. As you can tell, they had to do so much cutting and chopping and condensing the information. And so I wanted to be a writer for most of my life. I mean, because the first thing I ever wanted to be was a hairdresser. Random fun fact that my grandmother reminded me of the other day. That lasted as long as I was told by, I guess, my parents or family that, well, that means having to touch people's scalps when they're not so clean. That put me off. I was like, maybe not so much. Maybe if I don't have to do the hair washing part. But I guess that career never happened. I guess for me, that was very much art and reading and writing. And I have a 75-year-old typewriter, and my parents were amazing. I'm extremely fortunate because I grew up in a household that was you can do whatever you want and we'll support you. They were realistic about it, this writing thing is gonna be tough. It's not an easy way to, I guess, make some bread and be fortunate. I think a lot of luck needs to happen in that. And certainly, yeah, I mean, as someone who has dyslexia, added layer of, are you sure about that? Is this the path for you? But
a lot of challenges.
Right. It is also still a very funny conversation nowadays because I still write a lot of technical stuff, and it's well, don't mind me, just gonna have to run spell check every hour because words will not be words. Just quite funny. So wanted to be a writer, did not enjoy science at all. I could not wait to be done with that portion of my life. Until, well, as most, I guess, young kids or teenagers tend to be, I was really bored.
Mhm.
You know, too much energy, not enough to do. I mean, I'd read a book a day, like 300, 400 pages.
Mhm.
Still, I was not, I guess, occupied enough, which, again, I think just tends to happen with young teenagers. And so my parents, you know, would suggest that we try more things. And my mom, she found this nonprofit organization called School, who I've since worked with so much and highly, highly recommend to any parent out there, who teach girls how to code. Now, obviously, I wasn't interested.
Mhm.
My dad is a software engineer. I guess my brother is a cybersecurity software engineer. So there was a lot of that going on growing up, and I was definitely not one of those that was inspired by it. I was like, anything but that seems horrible.
Mhm.
No. And so when she suggested it, I was like, no. No. And then, you know, my parents were like, well, but you can say that after you've tried it. Like, how would you know? Never tried it. And I was like, well, that is reasonable. But then they'll leave me alone. You know, it wasn't more like, that's reasonable and thinking like a reasonable person. I was a young teenager. Of course, it was more like, well, I'll show you that I don't like it. And then I can say that I don't. And then I was right and you were wrong. And so...
So how did that work out?
Right, it did not work out. I usually love saying and like just making fun of it and saying it all went downhill from there. My defiance of all of this did not work out. So I coded once.
Hmm.
And I mean, that was it. It was like 2 hours in Prezi's Budapest office. And I mean, I loved it. I really tried to resist, you know, whole class started and all these, by the way, ladies that I love and adore nowadays, of course. We're doing the class, so I was just like, ugh, I don't care. I mean, what do you mean trigonometry and math? Ugh. Well, whatever, we'll get through it, you know, like really trying to defy the experience, like going in with the worst of mindsets. And then, you know, we started typing and we were learning this kind of very simple video game making software. So there was a lot of visual feedback that you get out of it. And I mean, I loved it. You know, it was like, I did this thing and now there's all these colorful like circles on the screen. And like, I did that. And I think at first I very much saw it as a really hands-on way to create art. And I talk quite a bit about this because I think it's very important that I didn't just enjoy the experience and the feedback and the kind of immediate success that I got out of it.
Mhm.
I liked that it was kind of still art in a way to me and that I got to use it for that. I mean, I'd make the funniest video games that certainly tried to incorporate some of that art element.
Mhm.
But it was more, you know, I was never really like talented at anything. I mean, I know everyone's out there like they're good at picking up a sport or like any. I'm one of those people that you watch do sports and it's uncomfortable to observe.
I don't relate to that.
How can someone be just so unnaturally struggling to, it's been almost 26 years and now I can catch a ball thrown at me. There's a lot of panic involved though. It's very like, okay, it's happening. I gotta like really focus. It's genuinely terrifying. And so I wasn't like that with art either. I mean, I don't think I could like hand draw a straight line for the life of me or sketches. I mean, I still love to draw it. I mean, you know, I certainly made for a whole gallery of art for my parents that, you know, they were like, okay, you can keep 2 because you made 60 today. Like, and they were horrible. Like, truly, there was no level of improvement through the hell, who knows how many years. And so I loved that I was able to code and I didn't have to have that kind of natural ability to go along with it, right? To draw a line, I just had to type in something. And it was a straight line if I wanted it to be, but it was a pink circle if I wanted it to be, or whatever whatever I wanted it to be. And I loved that so much. And so went home from that, I think like 2-hour workshop, and it was a course over like a couple of months, I think. It's been a long time. You're gonna have to fact check me on this. But I just loved it more and more every time. And I mean, I never had a problem with mathematics, I will say. I've been told off by some people in my life. I'm given so many interviews that, well, I mean, you say you didn't like science, but math was different, which is true. I've always loved mathematics. And I think mathematics always came quite easily to me. But I didn't really see the direct math part in science ever, which now, having grown and gotten enough education, hate to say all science is just math, basically, almost. So
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's a controversial statement.
That is a very controversial statement, but I will say people who believe that I have a master's in aerospace engineering, right? My master's thesis was, mainly researching machine learning mathematics, not, I hate to break it to everyone. That is what it is. My entire master's degree at the end of the day is mathematics. So most of my bachelor's as well. I'm so sorry to everyone. There's a lot of math involved, really. And so that part I didn't have, I guess, a lot of problem with, and I didn't mind picking up some extra knowledge like trigonometry. I wasn't yet learning that in high school, but I guess I also felt kind of cool. Like I already know that, because I learned like coding classes. Very not cool. Clearly I have no concept of what being a cool kid is, but oh well. And so that's kind of how it all started, and I loved it. I loved it so much, and I found so much joy in doing it. And I think a lot of annoyance as well, and it's maybe the right word to say, because I could not stop until I figured out a bug or like make something worse. Which is a big reason I did not end up a software engineer, because that's still that way. I still code quite a bit in my work because I just love it. It's not a, I guess, requirement. It's not something I would need to do in my day-to-day job, but I love to do it, especially because I get really bored of very repetitive tasks, which are an inherent part of almost anything, and so I automate a lot of things. And it's unhealthy, truly. I'm gonna be honest, it's unhealthy. It's you start it and then it won't work, and then who knows how many hours flies by, and you're like, well, I gotta make it work, and I just cannot stop. And I think I had that back then too, of just wanting to, and so I did a lot of like, I guess, extra work outside of these courses. Crazy, big change. And I will tell you again, a lot of people do not believe me that this was a shocking revelation, that I liked it, and then I guess that kind of fed back into having more of an interest in sciences too, more to a realization of maybe I've just been told a lot, or like shown, again, not by family or immediate, I guess, surroundings, but just education system and feedback I got from that. I wasn't regarded a smart kid. Like anyone you'll meet from, I guess, my earlier life, my teachers, my family, like my parents will be like, we did not think she could, she wasn't gonna make it this far. We didn't have that like written in the books that might happen, and it was very shocking to everyone. I guess myself included, because I never really had any like success. Like, they'd force me to go to some mathematic competitions, but like, not for me. Even English, I defied. I always argued with all my teachers, like, I'm not going. I don't like it. It's stressful, and certainly, I guess, what I started to pick up on, probably more subconsciously at that age, and then later on clearly, is that the classical education system and what it was rewarding was not working for me. And I did not experience any sort of success on that. So I didn't have positive feedback in my action feedback loop. And so I wasn't thinking that I could be doing those things. Whereas with literature, I had that feedback. I knew way more about authors than any of my peers. And so that was a great experience for me. I did not have that with physics. I almost failed chemistry the first year I ever learned it. Which is a very funny thing when you like scroll through all my notes. Because I was, at the end of the day, if you're looking at it objectively, I was a decent student. I had like 4s or 5s. We have a 1 through 5 scale, one being the worst. So I wasn't bad, but I guess I wasn't regarded as one of the, well, I'm sure everyone knows the smart kids in your class, right? The students who I well loved and adored, and then I was just kind of there. Not really a problem, but like, she'll get through this. But GM may not have been really reflected directly in the numbers. That's kind of the category I was put in, and that's what I believe for myself. And I guess with all that, I got kind of annoyed again. I guess this defiance is kind of a theme in my personality and how I've handled these situations. That I was like, well, maybe I could be good at science too, if I was looking for outside sources that presented it in a way that worked for me. Not the sit there for 45 minutes, listen to someone go on and on about it, because it was truly just like the most confusing thing to me. So I watched this one documentary with my brother, which I did not want to watch, but he said yes, and he had the remote. He's my older brother. I had no choice. It was a lost battle. So he had the remote at that point. And he wanted to watch this documentary on Netflix about the Higgs boson. It's called Particle Fever. I mentioned it quite a few times. And that's what really sold me on the space aspect of things, and like confusing high level physics theories came out of nowhere. And I always say I should rewatch it. I still have not made the time, but I really should. It was about the, I guess, start of CERN, and it followed the lives of some of the scientists that worked on CERN, and then, they were kind of making it more like a life-related documentary than really just the science behind it, which they also discussed. They talked about the Higgs boson quite a bit, and which obviously was the point of studying CERN. But they talked, more like, well, there were all these news because many people thought they were going to open a black hole and we were all going to die. And it's quite funny. Well, anyway, so they followed the lives of these scientists. And I think that made it feel so much closer than, a textbook ever could have of scientists. Because I grew up with the same mindset, right? I mean, one of the biggest things I try and dispute with most of my being on social media and doing science communication for the past 10 years, it's been a lifelong journey at this point, is that there's no such thing as like being a genius. I mean, yes, some people have this sort of inherent ability to memorize things or pick up on knowledge or remember, but it's not a requirement to be good at a scientific field. And that's why I don't really like the whole like calling myself a rocket scientist or anything. I guess by definition, the most equivalent to a rocket scientist is an aerospace engineering degree. But it just feels so, maybe preposterous is not the right word, but kind of make pretend in a way for me of, well, I'm this sort of magnificent being or someone like really like a genius of sorts, which as someone who knows many, many aerospace engineers, absolutely not true. Nowhere near. First of all, they almost all struggle with imposter syndrome and feeling not good enough. Even people who won Nobel Prizes do very heavily. But it's more just this idea of I wasn't put on this path. I wasn't like one of the smart kids. I'm, all that. But I worked hard, very, very hard. And that is what matters at the end of the day. I mean, you got to find the right way to learn and the way that works for you. I think that takes a lot of maturity and time, unfortunately, which I think is why a lot of people really struggle in high school. And obviously, especially before that. And which is, the usual. I classically say that education and learning is not one size fits all, but it's the only size in which you can really buy it. Except if you're, extremely fortunate where your parents can afford to pay maybe like private education that's just tailored to you. But even then, right, the very classic methods of education that we are able to provide to people, even in university, you have classes of hundreds of people. That may not be the way that works for you. The way that lecture goes, the way that anything goes, may not be the way that you'll be able to decipher that information.
Yeah.
And there may be many that works great for you, right? I mean, for me, intuitively figuring out it, like if you sit me down in front of a brand new software I've never seen, shockingly quickly I can figure out where everything is and find it, and even kind of make up the source of tools I would imagine it includes and like investigate all of it very quickly. I'm good at that. That's kind of more the hands-on self-learning. Sitting in a lecture for who knows how many hours, I mean, I'll admit to this, I even fell asleep in college. Even if I wasn't tired, I mean, when it's, a whole day of like 12 hours of lectures, this just doesn't work for me. My brain cannot focus that long, whether that's ADHD or anything else.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I'm not a big fan of lectures, especially the ones that you have to attend at 8 o'clock in the morning, because I would love to hear you lecture, but at a time when my brain is ready to hear it and it's not at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's just a waste of time for me. But, different things work for different people. So actually, you mentioned a lot of things already, I think, about some of the things that you have to do day to day. What is a safety engineer? What do they do? In simple terms, though.
There's funny ways to explain this. I do love, I guess as a joke, again, preface this by saying this is a joke. I spent a lot of time thinking about how people can die. It's very morbid.
Like doctors.
Not morbid like that, I will say. I don't actually interact with that.
We think about it so we can try to stop it.
Yes. I will say that is a lot like that, right? We want to avoid that at all costs. And obviously that's not really what I just do, like sit around like a philosopher and just, what if? But there's a lot of, I guess, what if in my job. It's kind of complicated. I work as a safety and reliability engineer. basically, if you may imagine, obviously there's regulations and requirements as to how aircraft, spacecraft, and many more things need to work at the end of the day so that we're not doing any harm in people. Let's go with that kind of simpler idea. Obviously, that's also true about environment and everything, right? But at the end of the day, the way most people interact with it is if you get on a plane, you want to get to your destination safe and sound, not a scratch. So that's kind of how our analysis starts. We work as systems engineers most of the time. Very important aspect to realize that there's different systems that work together in an aircraft. You have your many systems are in aircraft. Right? It's a complex thing. I mainly work on avionics and automated flight control systems. So a lot of the brain of the operation, essentially, like controlling things, And so my job is analyzing, understanding all of those systems. I don't just have to understand how the wings get controlled and the brains of the operation, but many other things. All those systems I have to know quite deeply to know that if X happens, then what else happens and what does that lead to? And then we obviously model it out, and I calculate a lot of probabilities later. So it certainly starts with what we call an FHA, which is a fault hazard analysis. That's the kind of, well, if this happens, what happens to the aircraft? How many people may die? And then all the other things, like what is the kind of end result of that and how may it be mitigated? Obviously, there are million+1 mitigations in every aircraft that most people are completely unaware of. And so then we take that and then we model all these scenarios mathematically. Because at the end of the day, and I guess small self-plug, I talk about a lot of this in my TED Talk, is probability is what matters. A lot of my job is accepting and knowing anything can happen. A piano can follow me right in this instant. Right. It's just extremely unlikely, right? And that is a probability you can calculate. Obviously not about things like this, but I'm sure there's some sort of data you can acquire about how likely is there to be a piano in this sort of building, like what floor are we on, how close, all the other wonders of mathematics and scientific deduction. And so obviously when it comes to aircraft or spacecraft, you have all of this data already, or you are getting it through testing or simulation most of the time, really is what I should say for testing. And so, and obviously that ties to how likely something has requirements based on how severe the effects are. So if it's something really minor, like, there may be a 2-minute delay in your arrival because something happened, that's fine, right? No one's getting hurt, doesn't really matter. But if it's, several people will die or the entire plane crashes, that's catastrophic. And those have certain probabilities that we attach to it, the catastrophic being E-9, which is a very, 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 very small number when you really think about it. And so we have to meet those probabilities. These are regulations. They are present at the European level by EASA. And then there's the FAA in the United States. These are the most commonly known ones. There's also a British one and a French one and many other things. But that's just kind of the law of the land. And then these are given to us in certain documents. And these are both standards, and then there's specific ones for hardware, and then there's kind of the book that we work by, which is called Aerospace Recommended Practice. Just such a lie, it's not just recommended. You should do that, otherwise you're not gonna be allowed to do anything, right? It's not like the certification authority is like, you may want to consider this. It's like, if you're not really doing this, we're not gonna
feel like it today.
Concerning. Please do not get an aircraft or anything that is will be taught. These are obviously very strict regulations. And again, there's a million aspects to it, from building to maintenance to redundancy to, again, many, many things to know. And then we take that and obviously adjust the architecture, and we have to have mitigations in place, and we look at commonality. I work quite a bit on common modes. Common modes are, same sort of small thing, like a certain hardware component failing will lead to one event. But that means that the probability is not just about the probability, right? Because both of them can lead to my event, and that's obviously something concerning. So then again, we have to have separations, and there's very many things. Even things like, not if you have any sort of similarity in your hardware or software, different people need to be developing or working on it. Because if, you make one certain mistake, it's going to show up on all of that.
Right.
So it's a common mode. And that's, again, something to consider. And so I spend a lot of my days doing things like this, mainly math and data and actually making sense of the data. And I write a lot of documentation.
Right.
This documentation of the proof of our work and the analysis we've done is what gets submitted to certification authorities, who then make the decisions of can this fly and where can it fly and can you start ground testing. There's many stages to this. There's different kinds of part of aircraft, as we call, I work on small business jets, but I've worked on large aircraft. I've worked on autonomous eVTOL, which I can now talk about. So those are different kinds of aircraft, and they have different regulations. And so you have to follow those things. I'm even part of actually writing one of these standards, which is a huge honor. So I'm part of working group 127, absolutely meaningless to most people at TRK, which when you work on these standards, I'm the editor of the working group, so I'm not just, brains of the operation. I will say I'm obviously very young in my career and early to be doing that, but I do have some ideas, of course. But there's no guarantee that it will become a standard, but you obviously work with some of the representatives of certification authority, and it's likely that they'll adapt it. But I like to talk about this because I think it's so interesting to know that the people working in it write about what we think the standard should be. And it's not just the certification authority who's reviewing this this should be what it is. It's a very interesting job, I would say. The reason I love it is because most people, especially in my field, when you start working in the field, you get really kind of narrowed down into one area. I work on, let's say, landing gears, or this one, I've worked on this one servo for 15 years. That's the other thing. My job is certainly very rare that I can already say that there's an aircraft that has at least flown that I worked on. Most of the time we're people will work 30 years in my field and there's nothing that's ever left the ground, really, that they worked on, not due to, them doing a bad job or being on bad projects, really. It's a lengthy process, and these things take a really long time.
Before you started, you went to the US to get your education.
Yes.
How did that work? Why the US? Why Virginia Tech? What's the story behind that?
So, I think I mentioned shortly that I got really into space and all that through watching that documentary. And so aerospace engineering, the word aerospace doesn't exist in Hungarian, which is really funny because people get so confused, because very often I'll get called a space engineer, which is not what I am. People also don't really get that there's quite a heavy distinction. And so that didn't exist, so it wasn't part of my vocabulary. I obviously had no idea what that was, and I was very detached from all of this. And this is quite funny. The way I figured out what I wanted to do is I was well, I like coding, technology, but I guess I really like kind of hands-on stuff, so probably an engineer. It's well, it's what engineers are there? And I was well, mechanical, I've heard of that. No idea what it really could entail or what it is, right? And so then I watched that documentary and I got really into some of these space things, and I was wow, space is so cool. I'd love to, that sounds great. That sounds very impactful to human life and everything. And so what did I know about that? And this is, again, just genuinely ridiculous saying this out loud at this point. And I was well, there's NASA. That's it. That's all I knew. It's well, NASA's in the US. I should go to the US. I should get my degree there, and then I'll somehow end up working there. And so that was the whole plan. I was I'm going to go study in the US because high quality education, and I can do space stuff there, get a mechanical engineering degree, and then that will be that.
Sounds like a solid plan.
Right?
Done.
I mean, the outrageous, just going for it that my 19-year-old self had is honestly something I envy. No second thoughts about everything, just set other half of the world completely alone, and things will just magically work out.
And they did.
You know what? It really did. Not in any way she ever imagined. Not in any way especially going through it. I mean, I've learned to trust the process, which is really hard. But things have always worked out. They always will. You just, I think there's always a plan. It's just people have to accept that it's not your plan. Many things just happen to you, and then you kind of have to pivot and adjust, and maybe you'll find something that you didn't really know exists. And I'm a huge advocate for kind of charting your own path and doing your own thing, because if I wouldn't have, I wouldn't be where I am today. What I do and how I do it, and what I strive to do for the rest of my career and life and everything is not like a classically charted path. And there's not many, I guess, variations of it that I would enjoy or find joy. And so, yeah, I guess I was just like, let's go do that. And then I was already applying to universities, based off on how well I did at my SATs. I was kind of looking at the options, also considering like what's affordable enough, what I could get scholarships for and all that. And I was on Virginia Tech's website already, and they listed their majors in alphabetical order. So the first one was aerospace engineering. Now, me back in the day, I was like, what does that mean? Right. And put it in Google Translate. It didn't translate it. It doesn't exist. Right. So I was like, I mean, I understand space, but it's the aero part. It's like, what does that even mean? So I put it into YouTube, and I cannot find the video, but I watched like a 30-second YouTube video. Again, like way back in the day, that was like, this is what aerospace engineering is. One of those like really inspirational music, like all these class scenes, planes and all that. And I was like, that's perfect. That is what I should do. And that was it. That is the extent of research I did about like, what are going to be my classes? What jobs are there? Like, what are you really nothing? Absolute, I'm sorry, I guess, but delusion, really. Absolute delusion of what reality is like. And clearly I wasn't very much an adult back then. And so I just applied. I got in very early too, which made for a funny end to my actual like Hungarian graduation and all that. And then I guess the rest is history. It was tough. It was really tough. I never lie about that. I've talked a lot about my failures, which is quite funny because I think it's hard finding a balance between how I try and do things, which is I'm extremely honest. Like when we were prepping for this, you were also asking me like, what can you ask me? I was like, anything. I mean, worst comes to worst, I just won't know or I won't answer. And I deeply believe in being honest. I cannot lie for the life of me. I make too many facial expressions, really not an option. And then also really just this whole thing of I value honesty very much as a person, and I can trust people. And I've heard so much about my field and seen people talk about it and science and all that, and I don't believe that that's what it needs to be. And so I talk about my story, my experience, what I've seen other people experience, but I do it very honestly. And part of that is that I failed a lot. Which again, the reason I was saying that's quite funny to talk about is because then many people assume I'm like bad at my field, or especially many people on the internet who love to call me like little girl. It's such a weird thing to do. May I point that out?
In the context of world events at the moment, is it that weird though?
You know what? It's a very fair thing.
I think that's pretty innocent and
well, but it's still, it's
I know
such a random thing. I guess more in if we're looking at it from the perspective of in what world would you call, a man with those degrees or kind of going to talk about, because I don't do, I do like technical representation and I do scientific talks, and I mean I do quite a bit of conscious career building and some of those sort of trainings, which I love to do. But in what world would you call someone a little boy that's, clearly beyond a certain age? Well, nonetheless, those sort of people, they literally love to pick up on that. And then I guess that really goes down the route of questioning my credibility. I've learned not to give in to that. Anyone can look at my LinkedIn. It's public. You can look me up. I mean, there's more than enough to learn about me. I've certainly been extremely fortunate with the amount of recognition I've had. Again, we also, I think, previously talked about this. People love to ask me how I studied in the US scholarships. I had over 20.
Actually, yeah. If you open your LinkedIn, it's just scholarship, awards, scholarship.
Education is expensive. When people ask me, my favorite thing to say is that the most expensive thing I own is, I guess, my brain, because it's my education. And then, if people were to, I guess, funnily love come and like rob on my apartment or something, there's nothing valuable except those pieces of papers that are just kind of shoved into the shelf.
Right.
Because you cannot buy the right size framing in Europe for it. Anyways, big problems I have, right?
But speaking of scholarships, do you have any advice for people who maybe want to go to the US and have no idea how to finance that?
Absolutely. The only thing I wanted to say to the previous thought is that I talk a lot about how hard it was and how I failed all my exams and I was doing horribly. Language barrier and just many challenges. And so scholarships, gosh, that was not easy at first because, again, I guess I kind of started this whole journey quite delusionally, like everything is just gonna work out. It did, but that takes a lot of work and a lot of stress and a lot of really, really bad days and really tough times. And so one of them was obviously trying to find a financial means to do this, which wasn't really easy. I definitely had several points throughout university where it was kind of, am I gonna have to stop? Like, is this it? And that's not a fun experience. If you've put all this work in, and then it's gonna be kind of all for nothing, right? It's not like you can get half a degree. It's not really a thing, and becoming a university dropout or something like that. And so I worked a lot. I had jobs throughout university. That's one of the things I highly recommend. It can be a little complex for international students, especially, for example, in the US, which is what I have the most experience with because your student visa ties you to either work on campus or like very directly related to your degree. But otherwise, it's not like I could, go work at a Starbucks or something like that. And so I worked in a lab, which was a blessing. I loved working there. I've become such a maker through working there. I worked in a makerspace basically on campus that was teaching first year students for their first like actual engineering project that they worked on. And I basically lived in that lab. I'm a very random collection of hobbies. One of the big ones being laser cutting, 3D printing, and like woodworking. Just obsessed. It's a mortifying sight. As I've said, I'm extremely discoordinated. So like watching me work with a saw or any sort of power tool, it's like, ooh, like impending doom. Still have all 10 fingers though. So
it couldn't have been that bad. Go on.
yeah, many to spare, right? So I worked there, and then scholarships, they don't come across, back in the day. I mean, now I guess people could just go to Google and be like, Hungarian, aerospace engineering scholarships, because you'd find my website, right? And the list of scholarships I put there. But obviously back in the day, it was just like, I don't even know what I'm looking for. And so it was endless hours of finding associations, websites, and like listening and reading all the like nitty gritty small type of, should I be applying? Do I qualify for this? Many emails sent. And so things that have worked out for me, and these are going to be, I guess, the reason to take notes. Technical associations, there's a billion of them. One of the most beneficial things you can join. Many people, especially in STEM, believe that you should be joining those associations once you're around the ripe age of 60 and have all these publishings and accolades and everything. And you should be doing that then, right? To join a technical group, maybe. Don't become a member. First of all, almost all of these have huge discounts for students, usually free. Otherwise, membership is not cheap. So it's a great way to get started. Almost all of them have young professional or student groups within their technical committees.
Right.
But you can also join any of the technical committees. It's not like people are going to eat you alive. I think most of these groups are actually extremely excited to have younger people join, especially students, and have them learn, always be respectful. Extremely important. Respect and know that you don't know much. Honestly, going into science, I think one of the biggest things you learn and realize is that you'll never know much, because there's always so much to know in the world and learn, and you may learn that from a 2-year-old kid who likes this fun fact and you've never heard of it. But obviously you have to respect that, and people are very likely to teach you with respect if you treat them with respect and ask a lot of questions. So technical committees, almost all of them have scholarships, and there's great ways to get started. A good way to become very eligible for scholarships is research. I think that's also a wonderful way to figure out what you want to do with your degree, because it's I feel like it's so easy, like how education, everything's laid out in front of you, and you suddenly become an adult and you have to just figure things out of like, well, this is all great. What am I really going to do? Like, what sort of job am I going to, go the academic route or industry, or like even within that, there's a billion things to do. I was, as we mentioned, delusional. So I thought aerospace is like narrow, right? I mean, so specific. Absolutely not specific. That was a complete lie. I usually do this slide when I especially go talk to kids about aerospace engineering and why they should do it. It's just 3 slides of, tiny text listing all the specializations and areas you can work in just with that degree.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to decide what you want to do. Research can help a lot. research can build a great connection to your professors, which is long-lasting, can help you pick up the knowledge a lot faster. I've mentioned this. I'm a huge believer on hands-on experiences with learning. This is one of them. Research is also very fun, stressful. Academias can be very stressful, but it's great. You can learn this really random thing. And also, some of the last times in your life, I would say that you can just very freely, without any, burdens of finances or restrictions that come about because of your actual life and personal life, just try many things. I think it's one of the last times you truly get that sort of freedom of just try whatever. So I did like 4 to 5 different student researches that has nothing to do with what I do now. But it was great, and I loved it, and I learned so much, and I built those relationships, and that helped me get several of my scholarships, because I would get scholarships to do research. Fortunately, research is not popular. You'd think even at like graduate level, people are more likely to go into industry. And so not many people want to do research. And so research grants and research scholarships and all that are something that's thankfully quite frequently supported. So I highly, highly recommend doing that. A lot of universities have this sort of internal website where they collect the scholarships that many of their students have had, or universities have their own scholarships. I will say, in many cases, if you're an international student, especially in the United States, you do not qualify.
That was my question, actually.
Which is fine, because you may for some. There's also student organizations on your campus that are likely to be giving out small scholarships. That's also a huge skill and a great way to get involved with the community and do some sort of leadership and more soft skill training. I led an endless list of student organizations on campus. Again, something you can very easily find out about me. I was president of 3 of them, social media chair for like 2 of them. I went through the ranks. It's not like I was just made president, but mostly, just kind of did all that, which again led me to many opportunities. I actually had several, like, they were not really just scholarships, but like student leadership related ones where I got recognized for the leadership I was doing with my fellow peers. And not only is it a great way to make friends with like-minded people, but also it's just fun. I made them really fun for sure. We do like very technical trainings, which I loved to do. Like I didn't notice when I got here, and I know many people did, but many may not know. So we did some of those, which also helps you retain a lot of that information and become better at public speaking. Extremely important. And we also would do just fun things, like paint night for finals or something, which is just a great fun thing to do. Water bottle rockets, like kind of being a kid a little bit in some of those aspects, but it's a great way to have some fun and get some laughs in with, rigorous academic experiences. So I guess those are my top recommendations. It's mainly professional organizations, student organizations, and anything directly related to your school, and trying to talk to anyone that may be in similar kind of shoes that you were or are.
It sounds like you did a lot of stuff besides the academics. And how did you figure all of this out? How did you find out about all of this?
Like, this is a very common... My favorite sentence that I get from many people that I talk to even nowadays, just, even kind of friends, and I had a couple meetings yesterday, and even there's some people who are like, well, how do you do all this? Like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, I actually get a lot of sleep. Well, not a lot, but a decent amount compared to university. And so I think I've become, one of my best skills is certainly time management. I'm very type A. I love a good calendar. I love a good color-coded calendar. Right up my alley. It took a while to figure that out. I used to be where you just take notes of what you have to get done. But then your to-do is like this endless, confusing list. Especially if you're like me, where thoughts just come to you. It's like, oh, that would be fun to do. Or like, that would be fun to try. Or like, oh, that's a great idea. And so endless lists of to-dos, and I thrive on being involved in many things. I've learned that I still need to learn how to be a little better at saying no sometimes, but I've learned that the more variety of things I do, the happier I am, because I'm a multitude of personalities, which everyone is. It's not that, I'm just an engineer. I'm also a family member to people. I'm also a friend. I'm also, someone that loves to craft. I'm basically a 60s old lady at home because I've learned to embroider. I love to embroider. I'm currently picking up sewing, so I've been making clothes and like handmade gifts. I love cooking and baking. Like, I make my own pizza dough and bread and everything. Like, there's a very lengthy list of things that I love to do. And I've learned that the reason I enjoy being like that in my personal life is the same way that's going to work for me in my professional life. So I need breaks that are different, that have a different sort of rhythm to my day, to my life, because that just inspires me. I mean, clearly you can tell as we were talking here, I'm like gathering so much energy to then go back to work and kind of do my classical job. But I also need that to enjoy this part, you know?
Right.
And so, but yeah, my biggest secret is just time management. If you master that, you can master so many things in life. Also, I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to do everything perfectly. I do nothing perfectly. I'm extremely imperfect. But I think a big part of living life is to always stay a work in progress. Hopefully in a way that you really are working on that progress and not just using that as an excuse not to evolve and be better. Obviously, self-reflection is very important and becoming a better person and better at what you do and all that. But I've learned to kind of find that balance of I'm doing many things. You know, I mentor, I do social media, I go on days like this where I do a bunch of talks and podcasts and really just fun stuff. But then I obviously do work, and then at work I recently just started this developmental program for the women who work at my company because, you know, kind of giving back to the community and sharing things I wish I knew, and then like confidence talks and really just many things. And then all the list of hobbies I just mentioned, which is kind of ridiculous. It helps me thrive.
Right. And speaking of mentorship, you actually started mentoring people quite early on in your career. So why was it important to you, and why is it still important for you?
I think the very short answer is that I always wish I had a mentor. And I still kind of struggle with this. Sometimes, you know, there are certainly points both in my professional career and all that where I'm like, I wish I could just talk to someone honestly. And that's difficult because you may have people that you see as your mentor at work, but I can't talk about work problems with those people most of the time. You know, that may involve, you know, conversations that are not maybe, you know, the most comfortable to have in that environment. Or, you know, I mean, I can always talk to my friends and family, of course, but they're not going to understand the nitty-gritty of some of the problems I may be having professionally. So I always just wish there was someone who knew way more than I did. But I guess part of it is that's the experience where you kind of have to figure it out for yourself, maybe. And no one just has the answers. Although I think as an adult, we frequently wish someone just did. Because when you're a kid, someone does. You know, when you're a kid, it's like you ask the people in the kindergarten that look after your parents, and they kind of seem to have all these answers to all the questions you have, or, you know, things you find curious about, and you kind of become an adult, and it's like, well, how all these questions no one really knows the answer to. And, you know, a very big part of that is there's many answers, but no one knows what's going to be the right answer for you. And you got to figure that out by yourself. So I wish that I had a mentor, someone who could help me. And I also kind of started picking up on the fact that so many people were reaching out to me because I'm huge on, you know, my door's always open. It may be taking a while to get through the steps to get to me because it takes me a while nowadays, unfortunately, to get back to people and give them valuable responses and all that. Which is a reason I've had to, unfortunately, recently close my one-on-one mentoring. I did it for about 1.5 years of hour of my time, whoever you are. We'll talk, we'll work on things, I'll help you. Which may sound like an hour, but it's obviously more than that because there's pre-prep, post-prep, you know, staying in touch, writing emails, all that. So it may take me a while to get back to people, but I was always huge about that. And so people started asking me questions, and I'd help, you know, my fellow classmates a lot with writing resumes and doing a lot of this sort of professional stuff that I knew about. And then many people, because I do social media, would reach out to me about studying abroad or aerospace specifically. And so it's like, well, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow structure this? And it wasn't just this sea of emails and DMs on Instagram and all these other things. So that's why. I think there's a lot that I know, and there's obviously a much bigger sea of things that I don't, but I'm okay with that. Very often, my kind of attitude and way forward is, you've asked me something that I don't know about, I'll do research. You know, there's so much to learn from books, from the internet, from other people. Or I'll put you in touch with someone that I think knows better. Unfortunately, my professional networks gets totally exploited. Like, if you know me, someone's going to reach out to you that you may be useful to. I am totally telling them to use me as a reference. I'm so sorry. But it's the best thing to do. You know, young people deserve and need that pulse, and also older people. That was kind of shocking to me. Many people who kind of wanted to pivot in their career reached out to me, which is at first very interesting. Like, you know, there's this, you know, let's say 40, 50-year-old man that you're sitting across in a meeting and they're asking for your advice. I was like, well, I'm not sure I'm the right person to give you that advice. Like, what qualifies me? And it worked for me to be honest about that and say, look, I've never had to switch a career. I barely have a career. But here are the things that I've done that I know work. Here's someone that I know who has done it. Here's some resources, some things to read up on. And I think that's kind of what my mentoring became about. It was more, I'm not giving you answers, I'm giving you tools to find your answers. So a lot of that was, I'd make like worksheets for them, like all these sort of things of how can you structure your life in a way to figure out what you're looking for and find the right information. It was wonderful. I mean, it's such a beautiful experience, and I certainly get a little emotional talking about it because there were many instances of people who reached out who maybe we're more just, many people I think are just looking for someone to talk to, that they feel that they can talk to. And I think sometimes it's much easier to talk to someone you don't actually know than someone that you do. And, you know, obviously, I mean, nobody qualified to be like a therapist of any sort, but, and, you know, I'd always tell them that if I felt that any of that was, well, I don't really know what to say, but I was happy to listen. And I think that also helped a lot. And there were so many great, great stories and feedback that just kind of, I mean, I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life for sure, of some of those wonderful things. And those will always stick with me, of really having been able to give back to people and help them and tell them all the things I wish someone told me when I was starting out. Or also something that I picked up on is that I preach a lot of what I don't really do, maybe. Because it's so much easier to say things than to do things.
Another way, doctors and aerospace engineers are similar.
I mean, I read it like they often say that doctors are some of the worst patients, right?
Oh,
because
terrible.
it's so easy to say, you know, I mean, I think it's as easy as like, be healthy, you know, do the right thing. I mean, it's so much harder to do all the right things, to stay healthy, be healthy, work out, stay on track with your nutrition, put all the work into it. And so I guess in a very ironic and twisted, funny way, that has helped me so much because I pick up on myself, you know, getting really passionate, giving these talks about things or mentoring someone, and I'm like, wait, I should be doing that.
I should probably do that.
Yeah, like, I'm saying all this, but I'm kind of struggling with that. Like, I'm not doing the reality of any of that. Maybe it's time that we implement some of these techniques that we're talking about. Which again, I also believe in talking about that. Again, I'm like the worst discreditor of my own self, I think, in that way. Same way with like how I talk about all my failures, because I'm horrible at talking about my successes or celebrating them, really. Work in progress. Work in progress to
Do you think
do
think that's a woman thing, or is it just a you thing?
I think it's often a woman thing because it's so easy for us to get labeled loud, obnoxious, annoying when we do talk about our successes, and then when we celebrate them. I'm a huge, you know, I guess girl's girl is like the modern term you'd use for that, but I am so big on supporting other girls and helping them celebrate and just really, at the end of the day, at least for me, my biggest goal in life isn't to be, you know, this like great science educator or engineer. It's to be a kind person. And I'm learning, I think that's my longest mission, is to also learn to be kinder to myself. Give myself more grace and understanding, and also other people. I try and constantly not have, or have better understanding of, you know, maybe some of the negativity that's maybe reaching me from other people, like, but also more objective self-evaluation of, was I being loud? Was I getting, you know, maybe too cocky or narcissistic when I talked about something? Or was it more, I can objectively say, you know, I'm good at something, and work in progress to recognize that better. But I think that's also like a huge thing about what your environment's like and how good they are at helping you with that. I will say it's so easy to believe. I think it's so easy to believe that other people complimenting you, saying nice things about you, are like, where you're missing. It's not. If you don't feel that way about yourself, their words are always going to kind of feel empty and feel more like a niceness rather than a truth. And so I'm definitely working on that to try and be nicer to myself. And I'm sure a lot of women feel that way, that it's hard to recognize our own success, especially in the loudness of today's day and age, right? There's so much going on in the world, and so much of that gets to you if you're on the internet. And there's certainly a lot of, well, funny negative comments, and then also negative comments that you have to kind of think, maybe there is some truth to this. Maybe not in the way that it was presented. Don't get me wrong, I'm not standing for people talking ugly to anyone, whether that's on the internet or not. Even if you're right, I don't think there's an excuse for that. I think there's kind of ways to point out people's struggles or something that they may not be the best at. But it's also recognizing that you can't fix everything all at once about yourself, and maybe you also don't really have to. Maybe it's okay to know that there's a couple of things that you're not the best at and that you have to learn to be better. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my point of view on that, is that I don't think it really matters whether that's a me thing or a women thing or a men thing, right? It's about how can we do better and how can we help other people do better. That's kind of the way I see it.
That's beautiful. And, one of the other ways that you gave back to community, I mean, you give back to community in so many ways. I believe while you were in the US, you founded the Aerospace Minority Program, right? Is that during college or?
Yeah, that was, again, just mindless. I mean, at one point I had 3 jobs in college and all that. But anyways, so in my last 2 years, I believe, in university, I founded the Aerospace Minority Program because I started talking, I guess, mainly about having more women in science, getting girls and young boys interested in it and all that, again, about 10 years ago, which please do not look up. Oh, God, there's so many things on me about the internet when I was way too young and figuring out myself and my style and look. Let's just put it that way. The look really, I mean, I was bald at one point because I donated all my hair. So truly, you can find some extremely questionable looking things of me on the internet, and also, God, I wish I never had to listen back to the way I talked when I was 16. So annoying. I mean, truly, anyone who had a problem with me at that age, looking back, I'm like, you know what, I get it. Like, she's so much. I mean, I love her. I know why she was so much, and I'm sure I'm still so much to people nowadays, but yeah, Jesus. So, I founded a program because I spent so much of my life going to podcast interviews, panel talks, all that, talking about the issue of why we don't have many women in STEM. I'd like to know, I don't know what the most recent data is, but a couple of years ago's data about 2022, in Europe, Hungary had the lowest amount of women in STEM, about, I believe, 11 to 12%. And that's just, we're talking degrees. We're not talking people who actually end up working in the field, which is a whole other problem in and of itself. And so I spent a lot of time talking about why that is, psychology behind it, how can we make it better. And then along that route, I had many interactions with people that weren't so positive, many that were positive, but many that were that then became stories at these talks of, well, it's still a problem in this day and age. I'm not gonna go into that right now, but trust me, I can give you many proof that this is still a problem and something that certainly comes with its own challenges. And my sort of attitude became more, we've spent all this time talking about the problem. It's not gonna go away. It's not gonna go away, in the next 10 to 15 years. And, I would love for it to go away. I would love to, eradicate it from our experiences, but maybe that isn't the only goal we need to have. Maybe the goal is to give people who are in those groups of minorities the tools to combat these situations that they may face. Because really the thing is, if you have the tools, if you never have to use them, great. But if you have to use them, I wish you knew what to say, because so much of that is emotionally driven. And most often we just kind of freeze and don't really know what to say or do, or what's appropriate, what may come across as something that may turn the situation more towards anger or uncomfortableness. And it's not easy, but there's tools, because I didn't know what to do in these situations, right? And I certainly don't preach these tools with the expectation that you'll know how to act You won't always know. Sometimes you will just feel uncomfortable and freeze and feel like you're just stumbling upon your words, and that's fine. But there's so many great tools out there that, psychologists, people who are conflict management or like experts in these fields recommend that you do. And so I started this program to start a bi-weekly session of let's talk about one of these topics. One, because I wanted to learn, right? I was like, well, I've picked up on a lot of these and I've done so much work in talking about this that I've learned from great people. But, I go to this wonderful university full of wonderful talent who, teach about these kids. I mean, we had people who were experts in these things. And so I thought, why not share that and kind of use it also to build this lovely community. And so that's what the whole program was. Really, it was a mix of some technical sessions still in there, but also mainly these sessions of what are some tools that may become useful, really not just from your career standpoint, but also as a person, but mainly from a career of working in, well, really academia or industry or anything. Conflict is bound to happen with anyone, honestly, whether you're a minority or not. Certainly, there's certain situations that are more likely to arise around minorities, but I wanted to give back some of these tools, and that's been like the best thing I've ever done, both for myself and some of the people that did participate. And it is kind of similar to what I just started doing at our company recently, which is again more like very development-centered sessions of how can you be better at some of these things, because I've been fortunate enough to hear and learn so many of them and, have a lengthy list of great resources to become better at them.
Mm-hmm. The challenges you mentioned. What are some of the challenges? I mean, I'm sure we won't be able to mention all of them, but what are the ones that stand out to you?
All right, the T, right? Just pun intended. There's certainly, oh gosh, I mean, lack of recognition, not being taken seriously enough in some circumstances, comments that I always go with the belief and hope that they do not come from a place that is negative, but most often really just a place of trying to be funny. Many people fail at that, myself included. But funny can be hurtful. Those comments can be hurtful. I've had my fair share of battles with situations like this, which I guess also ties back to how do you learn to take yourself seriously and recognize your worth when you feel like people around you aren't really doing that? And how can you become better at self-advocating and representing the things about yourself that also doesn't make you the person in the meeting that's just randomly talking about themselves? Because no one wants to be that person, hopefully. And so I think that's some of the big challenges of, I think most commonly it's comments that are too much, and can be certainly seen as not so great. Best solution to that actually really is to believe and know that it's not likely that it comes from a place of bad intent. I don't think people are out to get other people, generally speaking. Because I don't think anyone's really trying to hurt other people. It's just we inherently end up hurting other people, although we don't mean to. Again, both in our personal life and professional life. And many people want to kind of break the ice with jokes, especially when you're someone that stands out in a room. I feel weirder, funnily enough, in meetings and rooms where I'm suddenly around women and not men. Because it's not my natural occurrence anymore. I mean, I'm used to being the only one. And I don't even really recognize that anymore. But it's when people point it out. It's when people recognize it. It's when there are comments made because, it may just be because you're new. It may just be because you're younger. Like you walk into a room of people who've been, who've worked together for a year. It's a group of men most often, actually in my field at least. And so they're making jokes and then kind of the room falls silent because you walk in there. And then someone will try to break the silence, by maybe saying something like, oh, a lady has arrived or something. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it out of context, that's a really weird thing to say. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we pointing that out? Why is that relevant? And I think the reason it's a problem and the reason it becomes hurtful is because it can feel very alienating. It can feel very much like, well, I certainly don't belong here. And again, it kind of brings that reminder to you because I truly don't even process this anymore, to be honest, outside of the realm of where there are women. I'll always pick up on that. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lady in this meeting? So weird. But it's the kind of pointing out where you're kind of there like, am I supposed to say something? If I wanted to say something, what should I say? Like, how do we then break the ice? If you just said that, it didn't really land, and we all just kind of like,
Mm.
And I guess that's certainly one of the biggest challenges that I think people tend to face. And then there's certainly some comments which just go beyond the line of acceptance. And what I found is that there are many people, even men or other people who may not be the ones who are directly experiencing this, but who are still looking for those tools of, well, what can I say? Because it's been proven time and time again. There's a lot of research on this again, that being a bystander who steps in that situation, it can be so much more lighthearted and easier resolved than if it's the person who it's being targeted against. And how do we not just kind of be there, but be there for other people in that situation as well? So I guess those are some of the biggest challenges that we tend to face. Well, hopefully. There's obviously, unfortunately, way worse versions of this. I often talk about how when I first decided that I liked coding, I had a class with my math teacher, and I was very excitedly, excited, young, impressionable mind, sharing that, I started coding and I love it, and I think I might want to go to university and like do this. And he looked at me, and again, it was certainly intended as a joke, but he looked at me and he said, "Oh, so you want to marry well?" And I've never forgotten it since. I mean, clearly it was a very, very fundamental experience that really formulated my experience in this. And it's actually the sole reason I started doing all these talks and everything is because I went home to my parents, and again, because I've been very fortunate, to look at them and ask, what did that even mean? Because I was so confused.
Right.
Like, what does that sentence even mean? Like, what is he saying? Like, what does me potentially one day getting married have to do with what I like to misunderstand? Like, did I say something wrong? And I mean, again, it's so funny to me. And looking back, I'm like, what a pure-minded person I was that my parents had to sit me down and talk about how, well, not everyone may believe that women are intended for paths like this, and that they may see it that, we're still meant to be at home cooking, cleaning the house, and being housewives, which it's not like there's something wrong with being housewives or house husbands, but it's the inherent belief that that's what you're good at and so you're meant to do, that there's many things wrong with. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd certainly love to live in a world where this doesn't happen to young 16-year-old girls or boys. Right? I mean, I'm sure there's boys out there who wanted to be a nurse, and then they were told, well, that's what women do.
Right.
And so I'm sure that would be wonderful, but I just wish 16-year-old me knew what she could say if she wanted to say something. I know now, but she certainly didn't know back then. And I just felt so uncomfortable, and yeah, I mean, clearly it stuck with me for a very long time. So it's a very, very important experience for me.
Right. Let's lighten it up a bit.
Rockets.
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 Tell me about rockets, please.
I'd love to. I'm not gonna go into a whole lecture on rockets and what we can know about them, but I guess what you're trying to get at is that I do have rocket licenses. It's quite a fun thing to say. It's also very fun to do. I actually have an actual license. I guess people tend to ask. Not as much fun. Certainly not as much fun. So I, as I mentioned, I'm huge on building and making things. And one of the best things I ever got to do in university is high-powered rocketry. And you get to have certifications in it. So I have both what we call level 1 and level 2. The distinctions are between how powerful the motor is, essentially how fast and light that will go boom. These are actually the sort of motors you set on fire and that it goes boom. I mean, I hate to disappoint everyone, but the way you test separation of these rockets is it's gunpowder and you set it on fire. Just quite, I guess, funny. And so I have both level 1 and level 2. There's also level 3 that I do not have, maybe one day. And then the other distinction is you also kind of have to take an exam for the second one, and then for the third one you also have to do like whole documentation on the build process, and you have to do more and more. They become more complex rockets. So level 2 also has an avionics bay, meaning it kind of have the brains of the operation, and it does separation so that you have a T-parachute, a drogue parachute, and a main parachute. And yeah, so I
Any funny stories from the field? Or?
I forgot that I told you about the career remounder. So so many. I guess just the nervousness of trying to launch a rocket. Funny thing is, I've never been to an actual like rocket launch. But I've been to quite a few high-powered ones, where you still do like, 10, 9, like the whole fun part, but it's so nerve-wracking, but it's, your thing. So the funny thing is the first one, my first rocket, horrible timing for the launch day, because there's obviously restrictions as to what sort of weather you can launch rockets. And, if it's like pouring rain and very strong wind, you obviously cannot, because, well, it's still explosives. Like, it's very dangerous things. And so the first time I randomly had to go to like an award gala because I was nominated. And it was on campus, and then, I had to dress up very fancy and nice and all that. And so then I had like 15 minutes to get in a car and go launch this rocket because the weather was not looking good. Because horrible weather, and we knew a storm was coming, and it was like, barely on the point of like last launches going out. And so I jumped in a car, like still wearing like stilettos, a skirt, everything. I put on like a sweater and jeans, and like it was, ridiculous. And then, it was like starting to rain, like very small little bits. We were waiting for it to clear, and then I launched it. And then, so, you only get certified if you can also retrieve your rocket. It's supposed to be like relaunchable, I wouldn't say reusable, but relaunchable in the sense that you can put a new motor in it and it should be able to fly again. And so problem with that is that everything was going great. You have to obviously have visuals on the rocket, on the launch site, and which is quite funny, this sort of like shoutings that people do, and it's like heads up because it's like about the people, or it's actually really, really fun. And so we were all observing line, the parachute slows it down quite a bit, obviously, so it's like slowly coming, and you're trying to like watch where it goes. And I was like quite low already, kind of like height of trees, and then random wind gusts, just and then we watched it like just go into these woods. And you usually obviously launch rockets middle of nowhere on farms. And so we spent about 2-3 hours in like grass taller than me. So I was on like, sitting on the shoulders of my friends, like trying to find this damn rocket as like the storm starts and rain's coming down. And it's just,
What could go wrong?
it was absolutely comical, I mean, it's truly, sometimes my life should be a movie in that regard, but it was absolutely ridiculous. And then eventually I got certified because weather events are kind of not your fault, obviously, and so we never found it. So if anyone ever found a purple rocket called Pluto, let me know. She's somewhere in a tree, in a branch. And then my strain of luck continues. So for the second one, just way more stressful. Because we had to, also drive quite far to have like the right high clearance, the right sort of launch site where you can launch such big rockets. So she was pink. It was decorated in capybaras, like capybara stickers, like it's 100 of them.
Oh, my daughter loves capybaras. You would have loved it.
They are great. Oh, she told me I would have brought you some stickers. I have so many. Well, anyways, so, again, countdown starts, and the way that these work is that you, obviously, from afar, they set off a small charge that you shove into the bottom of the rocket, and then that lights the motor. And so, you do the whole shoving and all that, and then from afar, you watch it, like, start this spark, and then it's, like, going up, and you can see it go inside the tube. So you're anticipating that the launch will begin. Watch the spark, and it's like nothing's happening, and you gotta wait a while because you gotta get the all clear. I mean, again, it's a big explosive motor, so dangerous thing to get close to. So then we're like, oh no, and then we go there with my friend who was helping me, who even has a level 3, and he, we look on the ground, and there it is, like the little part that you put in, it's fallen on the ground.
Oh.
So we're like, oh no, we need another charge. But we've driven a long time and we have no extras. So we're like, okay. So we start, shouting around this launch site of all the people launching. And then there's this, I mean, such an American movie scene of like this classic old grandpa who has like this very Western accent, cowboy hat, all that, and is like, come over here. And he opens the back of this ridiculously large truck. I can hardly see like the platform of the truck. And then he like, buckles it down again, like a complete movie scene, honestly, like it falls open and it's just boxes of rocket parts and everything.
I mean, obviously. Like,
Oh,
why wouldn't it be there?
So we're like, oh my God, please, I need this. He's like, yeah, it will be, I don't know, $5. And then we're like, yeah, like, last phase, like, I only take cash. I'm sorry, who has cash nowadays? Like, when I come home, I do, I guess, sometimes. Because, like, who has cash except if you have, a generous grandmother who keeps you stocked. But really, no one has cash. And so we're like, well, I mean, we can wire it to you. Because he's like, no. I only take cash. So then we start going around this one side, begging people for cash. Like, like, can I wire you money? Or, like, I'll give you more. Who has $5?
This sounds like a scam, by the way, from people's points of view.
It really does, like, I'll only take cash, like, you have to pay me right now. And so we scoundrel up, like, from dollar bills of random people that we've, are, like, talking to across this, and you've got to scramble, like, again, there's short launch windows, many people are trying to launch on the same day, all that, and so we're like, this is all happening very quick. It's not like you have all this time, and again, the weather is turning horrible. There's sandstorms, like, like when sand picks up and it's kind of like a small tornado happening around us on this, farm, which was a grass farm. It's not really grass. It's like a lawn farm, which I never knew was a thing, that they like grow specific bits of lawn and then they put it on like golf courses, I think. Very random. I mean, that's the extent I know about it. I could be very wrong. Do not quote me on this. But there's these random snow. Yeah, them clearly. Then hail starts coming down. So, ice and snow out of nowhere. It's like March after the sands tornado like thingy. I'm like, oh, I mean, things are just good. Like, this is bad juju. I'm not superstitious, but it's not gonna happen. So then we finally scoundrel up the money again. Like, then hill starts falling and I'm like, no, we have it, but like, we can't launch. We gotta wait. And so they're checking, wind speed, weather, all that. We're waiting. Like, we look, weather beaten at this point, by the way. And then they're like, okay, you have 2-minute window, run, go. And so we launch it, and then it's the longest couple of minutes of your life when it's something like that, because the parachute's gotta open right at the right time, the burns need to be good. That's the first time you see if your stability is good, which is basically very easy to tell if the rocket stability is good. Did it go up straight or did it go? Very funny videos of what can happen if your rocket's not stable enough. And so it all, all those minutes of just yes. And then obviously my like PTSD at this point of it's gonna go lost. I was so concerned about this. I put a GPS tracker in it. That's not a requirement, but I was like, I don't care. We had so many issues with setting it up because we could not download like the right software. We spent like 50 hours just trying to fix that thing. I was, vacuum testing it. Anyways, many things went into this. And then the GPS wasn't connecting once it was like coming down. I was like, oh no. I mean, this cannot be happening again. But we luckily had very visuals on where it was going and it was quite close. And so
you got this one back.
I did get this one back, but I couldn't bring it. I mean, it's covered in remnants of explosives. Not a good thing to try and bring to airport security.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, none of those word combinations sound good. Don't even say those words.
Very popular. Like, yes, that is gunpowder remnant.
Explosives, ma'am.
Like, in Europe.
It's gonna be a long day.
So anyways, I actually left it at my university's like rocket lab as the teaching model. So now all these young men are learning how to build a rocket off of this pink capybara covered.
I love that
thing. Yeah, it's a sad loss that I couldn't bring it, but I mean, obviously, like, there's no such thing as like cleaning it enough so that the little puppy isn't gonna go, that's an explosive. That's a not a good thing to bring to airport security. Which is so funny already moving back. I mean, I felt like the worst person ever going to airport security because I think this makes me sound absolutely narcissistic, for which I apologize, but I had this luggage full of awards. Because, and I didn't want to put them in the big luggages, so I put it in my hand carry-on, and I had quite a few of them, like a big glass one to everything, I was like, if they stop me and they open this, I mean, they're gonna think I'm like absolutely delusional. You know, I just carry all these things, and then they're like, "What is?" Well, they are my rewards.
But you know what? Professor Kariko, she walks around with her Nobel Prize in her
Truly deserve.
It's like a party trick, you know. She sticks it out at all of these events. Friend, don't.
You know, I think rightfully so. I mean, first of all, she's qualified to do whatever she wants, and I mean, if I had a Nobel Prize, I'd probably be doing the same thing. And I'm just like, by the way. But yeah, so moving back was a funny experience. They did not stop me. We didn't have to have a conversation of what are all these things. But I was very nervous about it.
Out of these prizes, do any stand out for any particular reason?
I mean, the glass one is the 2020s recognition, which is a recognition within aviation and aerospace that they devote to the 20, you know, in their 20s, who they think are the most promising talent. But when it comes to, you know, their scientific contributions, so like really as a mind, and also what they're doing for the community and people around them, or their research and something. And so that was a wonderful, wonderful honor. I felt very out of place. And it was a very full circle moment. That was almost my last year in the US. And so it was like a day after my birthday. I got a whole trip to DC, which is one of my favorite places in the US. And oh yeah, I mean, it was a gala of the greatest minds. You know, it's like when our industry recognizes the greatest accomplishments throughout the year. And so you know, like people, teams at SpaceX and like Lord going up against each other in like truly greatest of minds. And it was just wonderful. I mean, I love dressing up. So it was the most fun I ever had, you know, like a gala level dresses. And I got, you know, several of them because there was a luncheon and then the gala. But the reason it was also wonderful is because I got to bring my parents as my guests, and well, that was just very meaningful to me. I mean, obviously they've been very, very important in the journey, and the journey I continue to have. I mean, they are great, extremely honest people, but they've always been great and very supportive, and so it was wonderful to get to kind of bring them along and show them something, you know, like that in the world. I mean, you know, they've never been to really anything like that, so I think they liked it a lot.
That sounds lovely.
It was great. I mean, quite funny, but great.
You do a lot of public speaking.
I think I just do a lot of speaking.
In public?
So too. That now I'm not talking to myself, you know, like hello.
So some of you were on TEDx twice. Tell us about that. How did that happen?
I mean, so random. Just whoever allowed that. They allowed me, okay, they asked. I just didn't say no. But yeah, I've given 2 TEDx talk in the span of 1 year. Which the second time I got that email, I really, you know, many times I've been, I guess, fortunate enough to get many emails where it's like, you know, when you like get emotional, it's like the email like about scholarships, opportunities, jobs, the 2020s, like many things like that. And then there was this one, especially the one that was the second one at Sziget Festival.
Wow.
I read the email and I just started laughing out loud, and I was like, this is a scam. Like, this certainly isn't true that I'm reading this right, that they want me to speak at Sziget, get an artist pass. Trust me, it is a gift to Earth that I am not a singer. And then, you know, go do yet another TEDx talk. Again, at Sziget. Like, just a very random combination of things. You know, like, 5 months after I given my previous one. I was like, this has got to be a joke. Especially because, I mean, it was this wonderful, wonderful lady who was actually my mentor for my first TEDx talk. And the way she asked it, you know, it was like, well, if you could make time for it. Like, I was like, I'm sure this is, you know, this is a prank. Like, what do you mean if I would be honorable enough to do this for them? Like, absolutely crazy. Those also had their malfunctions. So, I mean, if things can go wrong, they will go wrong with me. I'm very used to that. I'm very trained for that at this point in my life. My purse has the weirdest collection of random things. Fun fact, I currently have a bubble blower with me.
Why?
I'd love to tell you. No, really. First of all, I love bubble blowers. I think they're very underrated fun. Also, I was filming this video for social media about like airflow and viscosity and all that, and then I guess I put it because where else would you put it after you filmed a video with that? So, and it's been in my purse ever since, and I've been randomly using it when people are least expecting it. So
Oh no, don't give my kids ideas. No.
don't listen. I'm an adult. I'm allowed to do things. This is my rebellion. No. So my first TEDx talk, I mean, that, months of training. I think a TEDx experience is it's so not what you expect. It's not what I expected. At a certain point, they forbid you from writing the speech. And then they forbid you from reading it. The biggest goal of TEDx, and there's a certain process involved with how you prep for a TED Talk or a TEDx talk, is that the goal has always been to communicate in a way that's relatable, understandable, easy to digest for anyone who is across from you. And a big part of that is talking authentically and from the heart and in the style that you speak otherwise, because that's at the point at which we seem our most natural or our most, comfortable, which makes so much sense when you think about it. But, when you first start prepping for it, I mean, you're like, what am I going to say? Like, what am I gonna say? That was really my problem. I was like, I don't think that there's anything that's like a world-changing point of view. And my mentor, I mean, she's truly one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. And all she ever did was meet, and she just asked me these amazing questions. One of those people that just really know how to ask questions that then you're kind of like, oh wow, that makes so much sense. Or like, I never saw it that way. And she never told me what to talk about. Nor did anyone. And then I was allowed to think and write about what I thought I wanted to say. Like, what were the themes? What was the story I was telling? And the biggest point was like, the work that I do, what does any of that have to do with everyday life? And I found all these things that I think I was so subconsciously doing and implementing into my own life. And now I guess that's something that I talk about so often, which again, I didn't really realize that's what I was doing, which is I've implemented so many of the scientific methods into the way I contend my own life and just do everything and, testing, experimenting, collecting feedback and data. I mean, we all do so much of that without realizing we're doing it. And I did so much of risk calculation and knowing how to find the value in fear in my everyday life. I'm a very little scared person. I think that sounds so funny, but I really am. I'm currently on, I guess, my renaissance of saying I'm not too old to try and do anything. So last year I was learning to skateboard. This year I'm learning to snowboard. And there's so much, like, shameful to admit, like, genuine deep-hearted screaming involved. Like, no, I can't. I am terrified of so many things. I think I'm just naturally one of those people that get nervous and scared of things. And I guess I never realized how much of what I do at my job of dissecting fear and analyzing it is something that I naturally have done in my everyday life. And that is kind of the whole premise of my TEDx talks. Both of them really is that. I mean, we could truly all be doing that. None of us needs to be a rocket scientist to do that. And so yeah, you spend months prepping and there's all these things, and then at a certain point you're not allowed to read your speech anymore. Because the point is that you learn to tell the story of it. And it's not the exact words that matter, it's the way that you're doing it. But a big part of that is that I prepared these wonderful and funny visuals. Because you're allowed to have a presentation, and I'd never miss the opportunity to have a presentation. I mean, Conova fears to see me coming, okay? Not only that, my favorite fun fact is that when I was like in 3rd and 4th grade, like very young, I was the district champion, 14th district in Budapest champion in PowerPoint.
Wow.
3 years running, actually. I know.
How old were you?
I am almost 26 now.
No. Back then. Yeah.
I think I was like 9, 10, 11. Also, what sort of competition even is that? PowerPoint.
I don't know. Is that what was it called that, or did it have like a title?
No. It's like you'd go in. This is like an unlocked memory for me, by the way. Like a couple of years ago, it came back to me, and you go in. They just sit you down in front of PowerPoint, and you get these pages of instructions of like what to do, and then you gotta do as much of it as you can. So I knew like the weirdest tools in PowerPoint. So I guess I'm justified to say like PowerPoint also fears to see me coming. Which is why I don't use PowerPoint. Use Canva, people. It's so much nicer. And so Yeah, so I had these wonderful visuals prepared for my first TED Talk. And, obviously, again, being like a scared person, nervous person, I mean, I didn't wear my smartwatch before my TED. We decided wasn't, going to go with the outfit and all that. But I think my heart rate must have for sure been like 200 and something, like through the roof. Heart like sweating, like just in this, fight or flight mode, really. And I get on the stage, and we obviously had rehearsal, and I rehearsed it so many times. And I took a deep breath, and by the way, I think one of the first times in my life when I like had this spark of thought in my head, and I went to myself, like, this is very important to you. You want to do really well at it. So, like, just do really well at it. And I know that sounds so silly, but because that thought, like, really pushed me through of, like, I'm not gonna focus on the fear of it. I'm gonna, like, really just dive head deep into this experience and pretend I'm looking at the audience, but not really look at the audience. And then everything's going well. And the day off, they told me I wasn't going to be the one that's moving through my slides, which I was already like, okay. But, we rehearsed, like, I marked it down in my, like, kind of collection of thoughts, like, when they should go to the next one. And I would say, I think it was very logical what comes next. I think we're not even 2 minutes, and your TED Talk is supposed to be about, like, 14 minutes long, and 12 to 14-ish. And, like, 2 minutes, and I'm like, it's not. We're stuck on the wrong slide, and I looked up, it was in a theater in Debrecen, and I looked up at, like, the guy who's handling it, and I was, like, giving them a look, which, by the way, if you watch my TED Talk and you know this, you can tell. It's a classic, like, Eastern European lady gave you a look of, like, I am, like, please. And there's, by the way, also, like, a picture that they took in Emma, and I look so mean. I'm so sorry. Like, you can tell, like, there was a, shift in my mood of, like, what is going on? And, I'm not being nice right now. Like, this is when I turn to the dark side. This is it. Like, Anakin 2. Time to, draw out my lightsaber and all that. And so, yeah, the presentation was off by, like, the second minute. And in that moment, I kind of had to recollect myself and just be like, okay, you know the speech. You don't need the visual aid to know the cues of what's next. But I did obviously want to rely on that. And I wanted to have that. And part of the speech I had to alter because part of the speech was pointing out things and going, like, here and here and look here and all that. And so I was very on the spot managing that. And I'm so proud of myself for how it turned out despite all of this. Because it was very much like,
that sounds really scary.
Well, it was terrifying. Again, I think flight was turned all the way up, but we fought. We did not flee the scene. I mean, can you imagine? It's just cut out by the time I just run off stage. But it was truly a wonderful experience. There were also some hiccups with the second one. I mean, I attract situations like this. Something's always going on. So I honestly, to be fair, I think it has made me so adaptable and so hands-on with figuring anything out and what may be going on. So, yeah.
And you also made your own outfits for those, no?
Yes. Which I'm not talking about. So, I guess amongst the hairdresser and writer and all that, at a certain point, when I was quite young, which again, just don't try looking up the outfits I made for myself. Okay, anyway, so also,
we're gonna
check it out. If anyone was like, I guess a younger girl at that age, I hope someone will be able to relate. But I know it was such a trend on, like, Tumblr and Pinterest of, like, cut up a shirt and stuff this way, and then you, like, braid it, and it's gonna look so cool. I mean, it looks horrid, right? I mean, it's horrid, like, so much fraying. Oh, anyways. Also, self-made ripped jeans. I mean, that was the thing to do back then. Again, I really hope someone's like, someone can relate. But that was, I guess, my early teenagehood, and I really, really wanted to, like, make clothes, and I've always been, like, particular about the clothes I wear. At a certain point in my life, I had a collection of see-through shoes because I always have fun socks. So the most logical thing to me was, well, then I need see-through shoes. Which, by the way, I don't recommend. They're plastic. and then it gets moist in there. Ooh, not nice. Oh no, not nice. Oh, not nice. Not a nice experience. Not a nice sight. And certainly not good for your skin and foot health, I'd assume.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of moisture. Well, anyways, so I've had my fair share of interesting fashion choices. I'm not gonna like self-roast about today's outfit. I feel good about it.
You look lovely. Did you make all of this?
No. I made none of this actually. For playing it safe today. But yeah, so for my TED talk, it felt like a very big deal. It was a very big deal. My TEDx talk, and so I wanted to do something that felt so me, and a big part of that for me is immediately picking out the right outfit.
Mm-hmm.
What can I say? When there's an excuse to buy a new outfit, then there must be a new outfit. And I've always loved thrifting and all that. And I spent, I had all this time. So although I immediately dove in, I spent all this time just going, well, I can't find anything. There's nothing that's like combining or like my style of like pink and fun, but cool looking and quirky, but kind of like spacey or something along those lines. And I wanted it to have these motives in it. And so I was like, you know what? I've been learning to embroider.
Mm-hmm.
What if I like attempt to like dream this thing up? And then I made like the most. This is like completely documented on my Instagram and TikTok, and there's like several parts to this. I mean, you can tell the struggle that we went through to like get those done, because it was obviously like a very thick material, the dress that I found, and like my drawing skills are not there. So actually what I did, very like as Jeremy Clarkson would say, like I've had a brainwave, like a big one, is that I could just make the like drawings or find like similar ones online, and then I could project it onto the dress and then like use it to sketch it out and then embroider that way. And it honestly turned out shockingly well. Although I will give some background to this. It's an unwearable dress. Like if you've ever worn something that just hurts to wear, that dress hurts to wear. Because I put these remove before flight tags on the bottom, which seemed like, the coolest thing to do. It's a very big symbol in our field and it's great. But the problem with it is that they only sell them as keychains. And keychains are not a nice, soft material. Mm-hmm. And like the edges of the ones I was able to find online and ordered and bought had like glue on it that was like hard dried, one like pokey, and it's all around the hem of the skirt. So not only was it like impossible to sew together, and it's like butchered together, by the way. I mean, at that point I didn't have a sewing machine, nothing. It was like hand. Oh, it's horrible. And it cut up my entire ties both times that I wore it, both on the day off and then the day we went and took the pictures, because, well, I'm very fortunate. My partner, he does these amazing photographs, so I totally exploit it for my own good. And we took all these amazing pictures that I love up at the observatory where I live. And yeah, I mean, it's an unwearable dress, but I have it kept as, like a keepsake. I have this dream of like putting it in a frame one day or something, and then, having it as that. And then the second time I was way more ambitious. I was like, what if I like do all these sort of things? But then, that was much harder to come up with, because obviously it's kind of a professional environment, so you have to dress a certain level of respectable. I mean, the pictures are going on LinkedIn, okay. But it's a festival that I'm going to in, dead of summer, but it's like 40 degrees Celsius. Yes. Because it's like, I don't want to, but then also, heat and the festival, like the fun stuff. And so I came up with this outfit, and then I removed all the buttons, and I did like, I got these pasting pins that I replaced it with, and I did glow in the dark embroidery. I don't think there's a video of that, but it was so cool. Like at night at the festival, like all the embroidery for like the astronaut and all that would like light up. And then I again did one remove before flight tag ribbon. I got it like specifically printed and made, and that was like the back in a bow. And I got these like, I wanted to make it a little more funky, like more of a festival. So I got these like hair, like jewelry that you can put in your hair that was like stars and stuff. So it was very thought through. Also, the nails matched every time. Like it was very, very
cute.
Everything was kind of aligned and made so that it worked, and I loved it. And that was very cool because of those. We got to take pictures. We have a planet festival in Brno. That's where I live right now in the Czech Republic. It's like the coolest thing. It's like these huge blow up planets that they do at the observatorium. So I got it like aligned perfectly, and we got to take pictures with those, and it's just very, very cool. So yes. And then now after that, I think I was like, what if I picked up sewing as a hobby? especially because when you do things like this, your algorithm becomes corrupted. So I started getting all those things on the internet, and I was just like, oh, I wanna make clothes. That sounds really fun. Or like gifts. So I made so many handmade sewn gifts for my friends and family for Christmas. It was ridiculous. Brings me to the point of you gotta stop doing that at a certain point, because you get too old, you're too busy. And like as soon as I stopped working, I spent like 2 straight days just making them, and like, hands coming apart. Like I poked myself so many times, and but yeah, it was great, and I love making them. So now I'm in the business of actually making clothes, but it's not going very well so far, I will say.
You gonna sell it?
Oh, I don't think so. I'm never really one that like uses my hobbies as like a financial thing. I mean, I'm very fortunate. My job pays really well, and I'm certainly in a field where that's not really a problem. I also think because that way it's just something I do for myself. I think we need many things like that. I think so often when we start something, especially because as children, we're often told that, like, the things you take interest in, like sports, that you should also be good at. I was always horrible at anything I tried, and I hated it as a kid. I was like, well, like, it kind of feels like a dead end of like, why am I investing all this time and energy, and certainly your parents as well, a certain amount of money into them doing this, that they're so bad at it. But it brought me so much joy, and I'm a huge advocate for doing things you're bad at just because you like doing it. I don't think we need to be good at everything. I think some things you can just do because you enjoy it and you like it, and eventually somehow you also get a little better at it, but certainly not me yet. To my friends and family got sewing things, do not look at the seams too close. They're not very sturdy. But I just love doing it, and it makes me very happy. So I don't think I'd ever want to do that, but it's not like I wouldn't, work together with people if they ever reached out, but certainly not as like a job. It's just something I like to do. So.
That sounds fun. Now, before we wrap up for today, do you have any final pearls of wisdom or advice for girls, young women who want to go into a field that's not traditionally filled with women? Any advice for them?
We can do things when we're scared. I think that's a big one, just do it, even if you're doing it badly, even if you're doing it scared. It makes no difference if you're doing it. And then at least you know that you've tried. It's okay to quit things. It's okay to stop doing things that aren't making you happy, that aren't what you think you wanted to do. It's okay to change your mind. I think you should. I don't think you should always have the same perspective. I mean, I would be terrified of myself if I had the same perspective as I did when I was, 9? I'm sure I had very deep thoughts about the world, but I'm certain those should have changed by now. And yeah, what I mentioned before, just, always be a kind person. That pays the best, even when other people aren't being kind to you. I think that's the only real way to stay on the path that you're meant to be on, and also stay who you think you are. I spent a lot of time maybe adjusting some of who I was, because as I've said, I'm sure I can be a lot. I'm very quirky, like the bubble blower. I mean, it's very random. And I'm certain it doesn't make sense to most people, but to me, it's something that makes sense. It seems like the most logical thing in the world that I would have that. And so yeah, just do it and be what makes you happy. Even if other people don't really get it, they don't have to. So just do it as you, and don't change who you are just because you're not seeing it around you, whether that's at work or in school or even in your personal life. My closest friends, it's quite funny, we're very different people. And we grew up together, and we went to high school together, and many times my high school teachers would be very confused that I was friends with them. And even nowadays, it's like, well, there are many things we don't have in common. But, I mean, I'm so grateful to have them in my life. They're like one of the greatest blessings. And I think a big part of that is that, like, I'm me, they're them, and we just love each other. That's nothing to do with how we are. We don't have to be alike. So just, keep doing you, whatever that is, and, make sure that changes over time. Grow as a person.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your amazing stories. You should write a book, by the way. You should actually go back to that dream of yours at some point. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. You've had a lot of very meaningful experiences that I think a lot of people can learn from. And thank you very much for taking the time to come here all the way from the Czech Republic to visit us at the studio today. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was wonderful.